Hello YouTube, hello Facebook, hello the world overall. My name is Morgan James Does Games, otherwise known as Gavinator or whatever the hell I'm calling myself today. And I have right in front of me the Democratic response memo to the Republicans' memo. It's going to be all kinds of fun. Alright, we're going to turn that down so that way we have some music to this. And here we go. And I'm going to read this whole entire thing. So it's going to take a while. And I'm going to give my reactions and everything else. So, to all members of the House of Representatives from the HPSCI minority. Date is January 29th, 2018. Replying to correcting the record, the Russia investigation. The HPSCI majority's move to release the House of Representatives its allegations against the Federal Bureau of Investigation, or the FBI, and the Department of Justice, DOJ, is a transparent effort to undermine those agencies, the Special Counsel and Congress investigations. It also risks public exposure to sensitive sources and methods for no legitimate purpose. Damn. FBI and DOJ officials did not abuse the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, FISA, process, omit material information, or subvert this vital tool to spy on the Trump campaign. In fact, the DOJ and the FBI would have been remiss in their duty to protect the country had they not sought a FISA warrant and repeated renewals to conduct temporary surveillance of Carter Page, someone the FBI assessed to be an agent of the Russian government. The DOJ met the rigor, transparency, and evidentiary basis needed to meet FISA's probable cause requirement by demonstrating contemporaneous evidence of Russia's election interference concerning Russian links and outreach to Trump campaign officials, Page's history with Russian intelligence, and redacted Page's suspicious activities in 2016, including Moscow. Thick. The committee minority has therefore prepared this memorandum to correct the record. First point, Christopher Steele's raw intelligence reporting did not inform the FBI's decision to initiate its counterintelligence investigation in late July of 2016. In fact, the FBI's closely held investigative team only received Steele's reporting mid-September, more than 7 weeks later. The FBI and subsequently the Special Counsel's investigation into the links between the Russian government and Trump campaign associates has been based on troubling law enforcement and intelligence information unrelated to the dossier, otherwise known as the Trump intelligence allegation, which I've made a video about a while back. It was a long time ago. Okay, so second point. DOJ's October 21st, 2016 FISA application and 3 subsequent renewals carefully outlined for the court a multi-pronged rationale for surveilling Page, who at the time of the first application was no longer with the Trump campaign. The DOJ detained Page's past relationships with Russian spies and interaction with Russian officials during the 2016 campaign. Redacted. If I say redacted, there's like a space of text that's like blacked out. Department of Justice cited multiple sources to support the case for surveilling Page, but made only narrow use of information from Steele's sources about Russian officials. Redacted. In fact, the FBI interviewed Page in March 2016 about his contact with Russian intelligence. The very month candidate Donald Trump named him a foreign policy advisor. As the DOJ informed the court in subsequent renewals, redacted. Steele's reporting about Page's Moscow meetings, redacted. Department of Justice applications did not otherwise rely on Steele's reporting, including any salacious allegations about Trump, and the FBI never paid Steele for this reporting. While explaining why the FBI viewed Steele's reporting and sources as reliable and credible, the DOJ also disclosed 1. Steele's prior relationship with the FBI, 2. The fact of and reason for his termination as a source, and 3. The assessed political motivation of those who hired him. Point 3, I guess, I'm not sure. The committee memorandum, which draws selectively on highly sensitive classified information, includes other distortions and misrepresentations that are contradicted by the underlying classified documents, which the vast majority of members of the committee and the House have not had the opportunity to review, and which Chairman Nunes chose not to read himself. Background. On January 18, 2018, the committee majority, during an unrelated business meeting, forced a surprise vote to release the full House a profoundly misleading memorandum alleging serious abuses by the FBI and the Department of Justice. Majority staff drafted the document in secret on behalf of Chairman Gavin and reportedly with guidance and input from Representative Trey Gowdy. Who's Trey Gowdy? And then rushed a party line vote without prior notice. This was by design. The overwhelming majority of committee members never received Department of Justice authorization to access the underlying classified authorization, and therefore could not judge the veracity of Chairman Nunes' claims due to the sensitive sources and methods. The Department of Justice provided access only to the committee chair and ranking member or respective designee and limited staff to facilitate the committee's investigation into Russia's covert campaign to influence the 2016 U.S. elections. There's a second note there. As the Department of Justice has confirmed publicly, it did not authorize the broader release of this information within Congress or to the public, and Chairman Nunes refused to allow the Department of Justice and the FBI to review his document until he permitted the FBI director to see it for the first time in HPSCI's secure spaces late on Sunday, January 28th, 10 days after the disclosure to the House. Holy shit. The FBI's counterintelligence investigation. In its October 2016 FISA application and subsequent renewals, the Department of Justice accurately informed the court that the FBI initiated its counterintelligence investigation on July 31st, 2016, after receiving information redacted. George Papadopoulos revealed, redacted, that individuals linked to Russia who took interest in Papadopoulos as a Trump campaign foreign policy advisor informed him in late April of 2016 that Russia redacted. Papadopoulos says disclosure, moreover, occurred against the backdrop of Russia's aggressive covert campaign to influence our elections, which the FBI was already monitoring. We would later learn in Papadopoulos' plea that the information the Russians could assist by anonymously releasing were thousands of Hillary Clinton's emails. The Department of Justice told the court the truth. Its representation was consistent with the FBI's underlying investigative record, which current and former senior officials later corroborated in extensive committee testimony. Christopher Steele's reporting, which he began to share with an FBI agent, redacted, through the end of October 2016, played no role in launching the FBI's counterintelligence investigation into Russian interference and links to the Trump campaign. In fact, Steele's reporting did not reach the counterintelligence team investigating Russia at FBI headquarters until mid-September of 2016, more than 7 weeks after the FBI opened its investigation, because the probe's existence was so closely held within the FBI. By then, the FBI had already opened sub-inquiries into redacted individuals linked to the Trump campaign, redacted, and former campaign foreign policy advisor Carter Page. As committee testimony bears out, the FBI would have continued its investigation, including against redacted individuals, even if it had never received information from Steele, never applied for a FISA warrant against Page, or if the FISC had rejected the application. The Department of Justice's FISA application and renewals. Fun. The initial warrant application and subsequent renewals received independent scrutiny and approval by 4 different federal judges, 2 of whom were appointed by President George W. Bush and 1 by President Ronald Reagan. There's a note here, 1 by George H.W. Bush. So both, junior and senior were involved. The Department of Justice first applied to the FISC on October 21st, 2016 for a warrant to permit the FBI to initiate electronic surveillance and physical search of Page for 90 days, consistent with FISA requirements. The court approved 3 renewals, 1, 2, 3, in early January 2017, early April 2017, and late June 2017, which authorized the FBI to maintain surveillance on Page until late September of the same year. Senior Department of Justice and FBI officials appointed by Obama and Trump administrations, including Acting Attorney General Dana Boente, and Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein, or Steen, certified the applications with the court. FISA was not used to spy on Trump or his campaign, as the Trump campaign and Page have acknowledged. Page ended his formal affiliation with the campaign months before the Department of Justice applied for a warrant. The Department of Justice, moreover, submitted the initial application less than 3 weeks before the election, even though the FBI's investigation had been going on since the end of July of 2016. The Department of Justice's warrant request was based on compelling evidence and probable cause to believe Page was knowingly assisting clandestine Russian intelligence activities in the U.S. First point, Page's connection to Russian government and intelligence officials. The FBI had an independent basis for investigating Page's motivations and actions during the campaign, transition, and following the inauguration. As the Department of Justice described in detail to the court, Page had an extensive record as redacted prior to joining the Trump campaign. He resided in Moscow from 2004 to 2007 and pursued business deals with Russia's state-owned energy company, Gazprom. Redacted. As early as redacted. A Russian intelligence officer, redacted. Targeted page for recruitment. Page showed redacted. We're getting to the good stuff here. Page remained on the radar of Russian intelligence and the FBI. In 2013, prosecutors indicted 3 other Russian spies, 2 of whom targeted Page for recruitment. The FBI also interviewed Page multiple times about his Russian intelligence contacts, including in March of 2016. The FBI's concern about and knowledge of Page's activities therefore long predate the FBI's receipt of Steele's information. Second point. Page's suspicious activity during the 2016 campaign. The FISA applications also detail Page's suspicious activity after joining the Trump campaign in March of 2016. Redacted. Page traveled to Moscow in July 2016, during which he gave a university commencement address, an honor usually reserved for well-known luminaries. Subpoint 1. It is in this specific subsection of the application that the Department of Justice refers to Steele's reporting on Page and his alleged coordination with Russian officials. Steele's information about Page was consistent with the FBI's assessment of Russian intelligence efforts to recruit him and his connections to Russian persons of interest. Subpoint 2, or 3, 2, 3, 2, 1. In particular, Steele's sources reported that Page met separately while in Russia with Igor Sekin, a close associate of Vladimir Putin and executive chairman of Rosneft, Russia's state-owned oil company, and Igor Divyakin. That's a fun name to say, Divyakin, a senior Kremlin official. Sekin associated allegedly discussed the prospect for a future U.S.-Russia energy cooperation and an associated move to lift Ukraine-related Western sanctions against Russia. Divyakin allegedly disclosed to Page that the Kremlin possessed compromising information on Clinton, Kompromat, and noted the possibility of it being released to candidate number one's campaign. Note, candidate 1 refers to candidate Trump. This closely tracks what other Russian contacts were informing another Trump foreign policy advisor, George Papadopoulos. In subsequent FISA renewals, the Department of Justice provided additional information through multiple independent sources that corroborated Steele's reporting. Point 1, redacted. Point 2, redacted. Point 3, Pages redacted in Moscow with redacted. Senior Russian officials redacted, as well as meetings with Russian officials redacted. This information contradicts Page's November 2nd, 2017 testimony to the committee, in which he initially denied any such meetings and then was forced to admit speaking with Dvorkovich and meeting with Rosneft's Second-Time Investor Relations Chief Audrey Baranov. The court-approved surveillance of Page allowed the FBI to collect valuable intelligence. The FISA renewals demonstrate that the FBI collected important investigative information and leads by conducting court-approved surveillance. For instance, redacted. God. The Department of Justice also documented evidence that Page redacted, anticipated redacted, and repeatedly contacted redacted in an effort to present himself as redacted. Page's efforts to redacted also contradict his sworn testimony to our Committee. The Department of Justice's transparency about Christopher Steele. This is the awesome one. Okay. Far from omitting material facts about Steele, as the majority claims, the Department of Justice repeatedly informed the court about Steele's background, credibility, and potential bias. The Department of Justice explained in detail Steele's prior relationship with and compensation from the FBI, his credibility in reporting history and source network, the fact of and reason for his termination as a source in late October of 2016, and the likely political motivations of those who hired Steele. No shit. The Department of Justice was transparent with the court about Steele's sourcing. The committee majority, which had earlier accused the Obama administration officials of improper unmasking, faults the Department of Justice for not revealing the names of specific U.S. persons and entities in the FISA application and subsequent renewals. In fact, the Department of Justice appropriately upheld its long-standing practice of protecting United States citizen information by purposefully not unmasking U.S. person and entity names unless they were themselves the subject of a counterintelligence investigation. The Department of Justice instead used generic identifiers to provide the court with more than sufficient information to understand the political context of Steele's research. In an extensive explanation to the court, the Department of Justice discloses that Steele, and I quote, was approached by an unidentified U.S. person who indicated to source number one, Steele, that a U.S.-based law firm had hired the unidentified U.S. person to conduct research regarding candidate number one's ties to Russia. The identified U.S. person and source number one have a long-standing business relationship. The identified U.S. person hired source number one to conduct this research. The identified person never advised source number one as the motivation behind the research into candidate number one's ties to Russia. The FBI speculates that the identified U.S. person was likely looking for information that could be used to discredit a candidate number one's campaign, which would have been really helpful, but you know how it goes. Contrary to the majority's assertion that the DOJ fails to mention that Steele's research was commissioned by political actors to obtain derogatory information on Donald Trump's ties to Russia, end quote. The Department of Justice, in fact, informed the court accurately that Steele was hired by politically motivated U.S. persons and entities, and that his research appeared intended for use to discredit Trump's campaign, which, would have been awesome. Politically motivated U.S. persons and entities, and that his research appeared intended for use to discredit Trump's campaign. The Department of Justice explained the FBI's reasonable bias for finding Steele credible. The application correctly described Steele as redacted. The applications also reviewed Steele's multi-year history of credible reporting on Russia and other matters, including information the Department of Justice used in criminal proceedings. Senior FBI and Department of Justice officials have repeatedly affirmed to the committee the reliability and credibility of Steele's reporting. An assessment also reflected in the FBI's underlying source documents. The FBI has undertaken a rigorous process to vet allegations from Steele's reporting, including with regard to Page. Point number 2. The FBI properly notified the FISC after it terminated Steele as a source for making unauthorized disclosures to the media. The majority cites no evidence and that the FBI, prior to filing its initial October 21st, 2016 application, actually knew or should have known any of any allegedly inappropriate media contacts by Steele. Nor did they cite evidence that Steele disclosed to Yahoo details included in the FISA warrant, since the British court filings to which they refer do not address what Steele may have said to Yahoo. The Department of Justice informed the court in its renewals that the FBI acted promptly to terminate Steele after learning from him after the Department of Justice filed the first warrant application that he had discussed his work with the media outlet in late October. The January 2018 renewal further explained to the court that Steele told the FBI that he made his unauthorized media disclosure because of his frustration at Director Comey's public announcement shortly before the election that the FBI reopened its investigation into candidate Clinton's email use, which was utter BS. Don't do it. Tiny dog. The point number 3. The Department of Justice never paid Steele for the dossier. The majority asserts that the FBI had separately authorized payment to Steele for his research on Trump, but neglects to mention that payment was canceled and never made. As the FBI Records and Committee testimony confirms, although the FBI initially considered compensation redacted, Steele ultimately never received payment from the FBI for any dossier-related information. The Department of Justice accurately informed the court that Steele had been an FBI confidential human source since redacted, for which he was compensated redacted by the FBI. Payment for the previously shared information of value unrelated to FBI's Russian investigation. Okay. This is all kind of starting to make sense. Additional omissions, errors, and distortions in the majority's memorandum. Point number 1. The Department of Justice appropriately provided the court with a comprehensive explanation of Russia's election interference, including evidence that Russia courted another Trump campaign advisor, Papadopoulos, and that Russian agents previewed their hack and dissemination of stolen emails. In claiming that there is no evidence of any cooperation or conspiracy between Page and Papadopoulos, the majority misstates the reason why the Department of Justice specifically explained Russia's courting of Papadopoulos. Papadopoulos' interaction with Russian agents, coupled with real-time evidence of Russian election interference, provided the court with a broader context in which to evaluate Russia's clandestine activities and Page's history and alleged contact with Russian officials. Moreover, since only Page redacted, no evidence of a separate conspiracy between him and Papadopoulos was required. The Department of Justice would have been negligent in omitting vital information about Papadopoulos and Russia's concerted efforts. In court filings, the Department of Justice made proper use of news coverage. The majority falsely claims that the FISA materials relied heavily on a September 23, 2016 Yahoo News article by Michael Izikov, and that this article does not corroborate the Steele dossier because it is derived from information leaked by Steele himself. In fact, the Department of Justice referenced Izikov's article alongside another article the majority fails to mention not only provide separate corroboration for Steele's reporting, but instead to inform the court of Page's public denial of his suspected meetings in Moscow, which Page also echoed in the September 25th, 2016 letter to FBI Director Comey, redacted. The majority reference to Bruce Orr is misleading. The majority mischaracterizes Bruce Orr's role, overstates the significance of his interactions with Steele, and misleads about the time frame of Orr's communication with the FBI. In late November of 2016, Orr informed the FBI of this prior professional relationship with Steele and information that Steele shared with him, including Steele's concern about Trump being compromised by Russia. He also described his wife's contract work with Fusion GPS, the firm that hired Steele separately. This occurred weeks after the election and more than a month after the court approved the initial FISA application. The majority describes Bruce Orr as a senior Department of Justice official who worked closely with the Deputy Attorney General Yates and later Rosenstein. Yeah. In order to imply that Orr was somehow involved in the FISA process, but there is no indication this is the case. Bruce Orr is a well-respected career professional whose portfolio is drugs and organized crime, not counterintelligence. There is no evidence that he would have known about the Page FISA applications and their contents. The majority assertions, moreover, are irrelevant in determining the veracity of Steele's reporting. By the time Orr's debriefs with the FBI, he had already terminated Steele as a source and was independently corroborating with Steele's reporting about Page's activities. Bruce Orr took the initiative to inform the FBI of what he knew, and the majority does him a grave disservice by suggesting he is part of a malign conspiracy. Finally, Peter Strzok and Liz Page's text messages are irrelevant to the FISA application. Oh, man, I really gotta stop. Okay. Oh, fuck my life. Alright, I'm going to start from the top of that.